What do you think of when you hear maple syrup? Perhaps you think about pancake breakfasts around the kitchen table. Maybe you think about snowy forests and family sugar houses. But for as much joy as this sweet treat brings us, it also has a dark side. Maple syrup is big business, and people are willing to pay a price. On this episode of Pop Wild, we'll take a look at the cost of maple syrup and share a notorious tale of sweet deception. If you've ever purchased a bottle of real maple syrup, you know that you can pay a premium. An 8-ounce bottle at a grocery store retails between $8 and $13, and a barrel goes for around $1,300, which is about 25 times the price of crude oil. But why does it demand such a high price? Well, there are a few reasons. First, there are limitations as to when you can produce it. Maple sap can only be harvested in late winter and early spring over about a 6-week period, and production is highly weather dependent. The ideal temperature for sap collecting is below freezing at night and above 40 degrees during the day. Here in southern Ohio, that's usually February, but the season starts later the farther north you go. The geography of maple production is also limited. Native sugar maple trees only grow in abundance in the northeastern US and Canada. Another reason for the price of maple syrup is the time and energy it takes to produce. Let me break down the numbers a bit for you. Each sugar maple tree produces about 10 to 20 gallons of sap each season. However, it takes about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. That means you need to tap a lot of trees and collect a lot of sap to make syrup in large quantities. Sap also needs to be collected, brought to the sugar house, and cooked down. Fresh sap is about 98% water and 2% sugar, but finished syrup needs to be about 66% sugar. To transform it, the water is removed from sap by heating it in an evaporator. Depending on the setup, this can take hours. In short, it takes a lot of this to make this. There's also another reason for the price of maple syrup, and this time the answer lies north of the border. While Vermont is the largest maple producer in the U.S., it is far outpaced by the Canadian province of Quebec, which alone produces over 70% of the world's maple syrup. For years, Quebecois producers operated in a free market, selling their syrup at quantities and at prices that they saw fit. However, production could vary wildly year to year depending on the weather, which also affected their profits. So eventually producers got together and formed a group called the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers. The Federation began to control the supply of maple syrup by setting uniform prices, which boosted maple syrup from a woodsy sweetener to a major source of income. The Federation also built a strategic Canadian maple reserve. Yes, that's right. Never fear, maple lovers. Canada has a strategic syrup stockpile. Quebecois producers are required to sell their syrup through the Federation, and a limit is placed as to how many barrels they can produce each year. Producers who sidestep this process and sell their syrup on the black market can face criminal penalties. And yes, there is a syrup black market, which is where our story begins. Fall of 2012, Canada. A maple reserve worker began his climb to the top of the barrels to do his annual inventory. As he reached the top, the barrels under his feet started wobbling. Very unusual, as these 600-pound barrels are normally quite stable. Curious, he takes the lid off of a barrel and looks inside. Instead of maple syrup, he sees nothing. He looks inside another one, and another. No syrup. It was time to call in the authorities. Upon investigation, police found more empty barrels as well as barrels filled with water. Over 13% of the maple syrup had been stolen. But where can over 500,000 gallons of maple syrup go? Turns out it was an inside job. Another tenant in the storage facility, working alongside a fraudster, a black market maple expert, and a truck driver, snuck into the reserve night after night taking barrels. They would siphon off the syrup, temporarily replacing the real barrel with a fake one. They would then fill the original barrel with water and return it to the reserve, and would smuggle the stolen syrup into other provinces or across the border to America. Eventually, however, the thieves got sloppy. They started bringing back barrels empty, and even siphoning off syrup straight from the reserve, ultimately leading to one reserve worker's fateful climb. In the end, the amount stolen was estimated to be worth over $13 million, and it was the largest police investigation in Quebec history. The ordeal came to be known as the Great Maple Syrup Heist. Although authorities did recover most of the syrup, some likely still found its way to American breakfast tables, maybe even yours. Maple syrup is a valuable product and demands a high price. From the Great Maple Syrup Heist, to an axe-wielding thief in Vermont, to a high-speed truck chase in Alberta, thieves have tried time and again to get their hands on this liquid gold. But even though maple may have a dark side, it's still nice to think of it less in terms of money and more in terms of memories. So keep thinking of waffles and pancake breakfasts and kids in mittens. And should supplies ever get scarce, not to worry, Canada's got us covered. Thanks for watching this episode of Pop Wild. If you'd like to see more fun nature videos like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel. And until next time, keep it curious.